Hi, I'm not Bethany, but I am here to tell you what she thought about Fatal Frame 2. Fatal Frame 2 is the sequel to a survival horror game that first started on the PlayStation 2 and also appeared on the Xbox. The game was a pretty unique entry in the genre because its gameplay revolved around using a camera to attack ghosts. For the sequel, Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly, developer Tecmo stuck pretty close to that formula, although there have been some really kind of interesting tweaks to their approach. That's resulted in a slightly more polished game that improves on the original. Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly features an original story that actually predates the original Fatal Frame. The game's story revolves around twin sisters Miyu and Mayu Amakura, twin sisters that happen to wander into a cursed village, making its fairly annual appearance in the land of the living, and are caught in a web of spookiness, ghosts, cameras, and all the sorts of stuff that make for a really cool game. When the game starts, both sisters wander into this village and through a series of unfortunate and disturbing events wind up trapped in it. And as you go through the game, you're going to discover that the village has a pretty disturbing history. There's been some murders, a lot of killing, and some of it revolves around twins killing each other. So clearly there's, trouble afoot. And as we mentioned, Fatal Frame 2 improves on the gameplay of Fatal Frame 1. There's quite a bit more variety to it. This is pretty much evidenced right off the bat when you're sort of in control of one twin, but you're followed by another. Your sister happens to be psychic and very in tune with the badness that's going on in the village. So in certain levels, your sister's going to be with you and she's going to be offering you tips, and she's kind of a gameplay element in some places, which adds a new dynamic to going through the game. As always, you're going to find the camera obscura, which is your handy photographic defense against ghosts. The interesting thing this time out is there have been some changes to the core mechanics, mostly to do with functionality and ease of use. It seems like Tecmo has tailored the game in response to a lot of the criticism that the previous Fatal Frame entries on the PlayStation 2 and Xbox got. So the camera has one type of film that has an inexhaustible supply, so you'll never really have to worry about that. You're still going to have to manage the different types of film that you're going to collect because they're more powerful and do a significant amount of damage to your foes. But if worse comes to worse, you can just keep banging on them with the low power, inexhaustible film that your camera has. As always, the camera will come to be upgradable. There's a new system that's kind of been implemented. You will be earning different points as you play through the game that you can use to actually improve the camera's abilities in specific areas, which is very cool and kind of improves upon the system in the previous game. Basically everything's a little easier in that regard, which is cool because it makes the game a little bit more accessible. As for the actual gameplay that you're going to be getting into, there's still going to be a lot of exploration, puzzle solving, what you'd expect. However, Tecmo's offered kind of a unique mix that keeps things interesting, although you are still going to be doing a lot of the same stuff you did in the first game. There isn't a lot that is terribly repetitive. The puzzles are mixed up, and what you're having to do and how to solve them has kind of been expanded on, because in some cases you're going to have to be taking specific pictures to unlock certain areas and things like that, which is very good. One very welcome carryover from the original Fatal Frame series has been the ability to unlock different levels of difficulty, different game modes, and different outfits for the gals, which is really kind of cool. It's nothing life-altering, but given that the game's length is probably the first time through maybe about 10 hours, it gives you incentive to kind of go back, since it is kind of a digestible chunk to sort of go back and tackle the game on a harder difficulty. And there's also kind of side quests that you can engage in as well when you're playing through the game, so there's a lot more variety to it. Now, the graphics in Fatal Frame are definitely an improvement over the first game from a technical and an artistic standpoint. From a technical standpoint, the overall visual quality has been increased. They're doing some really interesting things with lighting and detail. that really helps give the game a really creepy personality. That's most evident in the ghosts that you're going to encounter, which are probably more disturbing than the ones in the first game. There's some really whacked out stuff that you're going to see in the game, which is really cool. And what kind of ties in very well with that is the game's sound, which is probably one of the highlights of the whole package. You're going to hear a lot of very disturbing ambient noise. The ghosts themselves are pretty chatty for being dead, and very big on scaring people. So it's kind of interesting that there's some really good voice acting in the game, especially for the ghosts, in that you're going to be seeing like a really upset little girl holding her head while you're trying to like make her ghost go away by killing it. So it's kind of cool and disturbing and creepy, and definitely has a very unique atmosphere that it sustains throughout. Overall, Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly is a really worthy successor to the first game. There's a lot of improvements. Some we're fonder of than others. A lot of the gameplay stuff we're cool with. The game's actually been made, the default game, like when you first play it, is considerably easier. The game's pretty generous with the items, whereas previous entries, like most survival horror games, you had to be really careful about your inventory and managing your health restoring items in your film. This game's a lot more forgiving, and that kind of extends to every facet. So you're going to have a lot of items. I don't think you're really going to have to worry about things too much. Along the same lines, combat's been made a little easier in some respects, mainly because you now have a dodge button that you can use once you've kind of acquired that ability. So overall, the game's a little easier, but at the same time, it's kind of better in terms of its gameplay. So you take the good with the bad. We definitely are pretty fond of it. Like we said, it's not without its faults, but it's also pretty cool. And so if you like this sort of a game, you should check it out.